Okay, so I need to be completely honest with you. This video was not planned, like at all. If you have been following this channel, you know we are in the middle of PM at the movies, where every week I take a popular film and break down the project management concepts hiding inside it. We have done The Martian, we have done The Dark Knight, and episode 3 is already filmed and ready to go. But then, last week, I went to watch Project Hail Mary, and I literally walked out of that cinema, sat in my car, and I immediately started writing notes on my phone. Because I could not wait. I could not sit on this until episode 7 or 8. This film needed its own video right now. Now, before I get into it, quick fun fact Project Hail Mary is written by Andy Weir, the exact same author as The Martian, which means episode 1 and this special episode come from the exact same brain. Same author, same science obsessed astronaut energy, but a completely different project management lesson. And honestly, this one hits harder than The Martian ever did. I said what I said. One more thing before we start. Every other episode has been a warning. The Martian, here is what to do when everything goes wrong. The Dark Knight, here is what happens when scope creep goes unchecked. But this episode is different. Project Hail Mary is not a warning. It is a masterclass in what project management looks like when everything goes right under the most impossible conditions imaginable. And it made every difficult project I have ever complained about feel a little bit embarrassing. Okay, let us go to space. The sun is dying, not metaphorically, not eventually, right now, actively, miserably dying. A strange substance called astrophage is consuming the sun's energy. And if nobody figures out how to stop it, every living thing on Earth dies within a generation. So, the world's governments do something they have literally never done before. They agree on something. They appoint one person, Eva Stratt, with unlimited authority to solve this problem. No budget constraints, no bureaucratic approval chains, no political interference. Just fix it. Whatever it takes, whatever it costs, you decide. Now, pause here because as a project manager, can you even imagine that conversation? Like your sponsor walks in and says the budget is unlimited. You have complete authority, no approvals needed, just deliver. Most project managers would think they had died and gone to heaven. And here is the PM lesson hiding in this scene. Unlimited authority is only valuable if the person wielding it has absolute clarity on the outcome. Eva Stratt does not waste her authority on politics or process. She uses it entirely in service of one brutally clear mission. Find out what astrophage is, find out how to stop it, and save the humanity. In PMBOK, this is called project governance, specifically the part where the sponsor empowers the project manager to make decisions. And the reason most projects do not benefit from this kind of empowerment is not because sponsors are unwilling to give it, but it is because project managers have not earned the trust that makes a sponsor comfortable giving it. Okay, this scene. Eva Stratt needs the world's leading expert on astrophage, on that spacecraft. That expert is Ryland Grace. There is just one small problem. Ryland Grace does not want to go, like, really does not want to go. It is a one way mission. He will never come home. He makes his position very clear. He threatens to sabotage the mission. He argues, he resists, he does everything. He even tried to physically running away. And Eva Stratt looks at him completely calmly and has him sedated. He wakes up in space. Now, from a pure project management ethics perspective, what Eva Stratt did is absolutely indefensible. You cannot sedate your critical resources and put them on a spacecraft without their consent. I want to be very clear about that. Do not try this at work. But here is the PM lesson hiding underneath this scene. Resource management is about more than allocating the right people to the right task. It is about understanding that sometimes the most critical resource on your project does not know that they are the most critical resource. Grace did not understand what he was capable of. He did not understand what the mission needed from him specifically. He was looking at the personal cost, a one way trip, no coming home, goodbye to everything he knew, and making a completely rational decision based on incomplete information. Eva Stratt had all the information. She knew Grace was not just the best option, he was the only option. And she made the call. Now, in real projects, the lesson is not to sedate your team members. The lesson is that sometimes your most capable resource needs someone to believe in them more than they believe in themselves. And part of leadership is helping people understand what they are truly capable of, even when they cannot see it yet. Grace could not see it. Eva could, and the entire human race is alive because she acted on that belief. This is the greatest onboarding failure in the history of project management. Grace wakes up in a spacecraft. He does not know his name. He does not know where he is. He does not know what the mission is. He does not know why he is there. He does not know how to operate half of the equipment around him. His two crewmates are dead and there is nobody to ask. No handover document, no project brief, no onboarding checklist. Just figure it out. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever joined a project mid execution where nobody told you anything? Where you had to piece together what was happening from some random documents and half finished conversations? Where the person who knew everything had already left the company? That is Tuesday for most project managers. Grace's situation is just the Mars version. And here is the beautiful PM lesson in how he handles it. He does not panic. He does not spiral. He does not sit in the corner waiting for someone to come explain things to him. He starts from what he knows. He observes, he tests, he documents. He treats his own spaceship like a project with unknown requirements and he runs a discovery phase. In PMBOK, this is called progressive elaboration. You do not need to know everything to start. You start with what you have. You learn as you go. You update your plan as new information emerges. Grace had literally nothing, and he built a complete picture of his mission using only his training, his curiosity, and his refusal to give up. If Grace can do that alone in space with amnesia, you can figure out your project even if the handover was terrible. Over the first act of the film, Grace systematically reconstructs his entire mission from scratch. He works out where he is, he works out what astrophage is, he works out what he's supposed to do, he works out how long he has, and he does all of this alone, using observation, experimentation, logic, and an almost obsessive commitment to understanding the problem before attempting to solve it. No project charter, no scope document, no stakeholder register, just a scientist with training, tools, and an absolute refusal to accept that the situation is hopeless. Now, here is what I want you to notice about how Grace does this. He never assumes. Every conclusion he reaches is tested. Every theory is verified. Every piece of equipment is understood before it is used. He is basically running a continuous quality assurance process on his own thinking. In PMBOK 8, this maps directly to the quality performance domain. Quality is not a final check at the end of a project. Quality is built into every step of how the work is done. Grace understood this very well. He did not assume the spacecraft was working correctly. He verified it. He did not assume his calculations were right. He checked them. He did not assume he understood the mission. He proved it. That discipline of building verification into the process rather than checking at the end is one of the most valuable habits a project manager can develop. And it saved humanity. So, no pressure to try it on your next project. And now we get to my absolute favorite part of this film. Not favorite as in, oh, that was a nice scene. Favorite as in, I sat in that cinema completely forgetting to breathe for 20 minutes. Grace is alone in space, completely alone. He has accepted that he will never see another living creature ever again. He has also made peace with it. And then another spacecraft appears, and it is not human. Now, here is where most science fiction films would go straight to drama. Alien spacecraft equals threat, equals danger, equals action sequence. Project Hail Mary does something completely different. It goes straight to how do two completely different beings figure out how to talk to each other? And that is one of the most extraordinary project management scenes ever filmed because Rocky is not just different from Grace in the way that you and I are different. Rocky breathes ammonia. Grace breathes oxygen. If they are in the same room without protection, they both die instantly. Rocky has no eyes as we understand them. He experiences the world through sonar and vibration. Rocky has 5 legs and 2 arms and a body structure that has absolutely no equivalent in Earth biology. Rocky speaks in musical tones and frequencies that have no human language equivalent. They are as different as two living things could possibly be. And yet, they are both engineers, they are both scientists, they are both on the same mission, and they both desperately need each other. So, what does Grace do? He does not wait for Rocky to figure out communication. He starts. He taps a sequence. One tap, one tap, one tap. Rocky responds. One tap, one tap, one tap. He taps 2, Rocky taps 2. He taps 3, Rocky taps 3. They have just established that they both understand numbers. Numbers do not need translation. Numbers do not need a shared language. Numbers are universal. And from that one shared foundation, they built everything else. Grace draws diagrams, Rocky responds with diagrams. Grace uses musical tones to represent elements on the periodic table. Rocky recognizes them. They build a shared vocabulary, one concept at a time, over days and weeks. Every single day, they learn 3 new words. They document everything. They verify understanding before moving forward. They never assume the other person understood it. They always confirm. Now, pause here because what Grace and Rocky are doing is something most project teams with the same language, the same culture, and the same office completely fail to do. They are building a communication management plan from scratch. In PMBOK, communication management means defining how information flows between team members, what gets communicated, to whom, in what format, at what frequency, through which channel. Most project teams skip this entirely. They assume everyone understands each other. They assume shared language means shared understanding. And then they spend months wondering why things keep failing through the cracks. Grace and Rocky had no shared language, so they built one deliberately, carefully, and with complete patience. They never moved to the next concept until the previous one was fully understood. They never assumed, they always verified. They treated every single communication as an opportunity to either build trust or to lose it. And the communication framework they built in the middle of space between a human and an alien is more intentional and more effective than most communication plans I have ever seen on a real project. Think about your last project. Did you establish how your team would communicate before you started? Did you define what good communication looked like? Did you verify understanding rather than assuming it? Or did you just start and hope everyone stayed on the same page? Grace and Rocky show you what happens when you choose intentional communication over assumed communication. They solve the biggest scientific problem in human history. So the bar has been set. Now, here is the scene that I think most people underestimate because it happens quietly, without drama, without a big speech, without a moment that announces itself as important. But it is, in my opinion, the single most powerful leadership moment in the entire film. At a certain point in the story, Rocky realizes something. Grace is in trouble. Not mission trouble, personal trouble. Grace's spacecraft has a problem that threatens his survival, and Rocky has a choice. He can continue his own mission. His planet is dying, his people are depending on him. He has everything he needs. Helping Grace costs him time, resources, risk. The logical decision, the purely rational project focused decision, is to leave, complete the mission, go home, save his people. Grace would understand. Grace would tell him to go. But Rocky does not leave. Rocky stops what he is doing. Rocky uses his own resources, resources meant for his mission, to help Grace. Not because it advances the project, not because it makes strategic sense, because Grace is his friend. And here is the PM lesson hiding in that choice. In project management, we talk a lot about resource allocation. We talk about efficiency, about optimization, about doing the most with what you have. What we do not talk about enough is what it means to genuinely invest in the people on your project. Not just because it makes the project better, but because they matter. Rocky did not calculate whether helping Grace was worth the cost. He saw someone who mattered to him in trouble and he acted. In PMBOK 8, this falls under the people performance domain, specifically the principle that says high performing teams are built on genuine relationships and mutual trust, not just shared tasks and common goals. Rocky and Grace trusted each other completely, not because they had signed a team charter, not because they had a team building exercise, but because they had shown up for each other consistently, honestly, and without agenda from the very first tap on the spacecraft wall. That trust, built one interaction at a time over weeks and months, is what made Rocky stop his mission to save Grace's life. And on your project, the team members who go above and beyond when things get difficult are always the ones who feel genuinely seen, genuinely valued, and genuinely trusted. Not the ones with the best job descriptions, the ones with the best relationships. Rocky taught me that more clearly than any leadership textbook ever has. And now we come to the ending. I am going to talk about this scene fully because I think it needs to be understood properly, not just felt. The mission is complete. Grace has the solution to astrophage. He can send it back to Earth. Humanity will survive. His job is done. And now, theoretically, he could begin the journey home. It would take years, it would be extraordinarily difficult. The odds are not good, but it is possible. And then Rocky's spacecraft is critically damaged. Rocky cannot get home alone, and Grace realizes if he starts his journey back to Earth right now, Rocky dies alone in space. The being who taught him more about communication, collaboration, and genuine partnership than anyone he has ever worked with will drift alone in the dark forever. And Grace makes a decision. He is not going home, he is staying. He is going to help Rocky get back to his planet first. Now, I want to sit with what this decision actually means because it is not just emotionally powerful, it is the ultimate expression of every principle that PMBOK 8 is built on. Think about what Grace is giving up. He is giving up Earth, his home, his planet, everyone he has ever known. He is giving up celebration, the recognition, the hero's welcome. He is giving up the ending that every person who sent him on this mission imagined for him. And he is doing it. Not because he was asked to, not because it was in the project plan, not because any framework or process told him it was the right thing to do. He is doing it because when you have genuinely worked alongside someone, when you have built something real with them, when you have trusted each other with your lives and your missions and your deepest fears, you do not leave them alone in the dark. You just do not. In PMBOK 8, there is a principle called stewardship. It means taking genuine responsibility, not just for the project outcome, but for everything the project touches, the people, the relationships, the broader impact of every decision. Grace was the steward of something much bigger than his mission. He was the steward of the most important relationship either of the civilization had ever formed, and he honored it at the cost of everything. Now, here is what I want you to take from this into your work. You will never have to face a decision as extreme as Grace is. You will never have to choose between your planet and your colleague. But you will face moments, smaller moments, quieter moments, where you have to choose between what is convenient for you and what is right for someone else. Where you have to decide whether a relationship matters enough to cost you something. Where you have to ask yourself, am I just completing this project or am I being the kind of project manager that people will remember? The kind that shows up, that stays, that chooses people over convenience. Grace chose Rocky, and in doing so, he did not just save two planets, he showed us what it actually means to lead with everything you have. I have watched a lot of movies for this series. This is the one I will think about the longest. And if you have watched it, I think you will understand exactly why. If this series has changed how you think about project management, you are exactly who I made it for. I'm Harshita, PMP and CAPM certified, and this is PM at the Movies. Subscribe if you have not already, and share this with someone who has already watched this movie and needs to see it through this lens. See you in the next episode.